my name is Leah, and today we're going to be doing a review of The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon is a young adult romance book that discusses the topics of fate, God, destiny, and a lot of different other existential stuff that is pretty heavy. Now, how does it talk about these themes? It is all set in one day. Yep, one day. I'm going to talk about that later. It's all set in one day, and it revolves around the relationship between Natasha, who is a Jamaican immigrant, who the day that it's all said and she's getting deported, and then it's also about her relationship with Daniel, who is a Korean American, who is, on this day, he's going and getting a job interview for the first time, but he doesn't want to get this job interview. Yep, it's a pretty cool plot. We're gonna first talk about the pros because I have more to talk about the cons. But let's get the pros out of the way first. My first pro is that the characters are actually really diverse and actually really well developed. Meaning that we got a lot of different characters of different cultural backgrounds, different personalities. Because there's a lot of times in books where you'll have like multiple characters that are just like Mary Sue's and all have like this basic personality, but it shows their flaws pretty well, and it shows, their perfections as well. It's pretty good, and I like it. Like, for example, our main character, Natasha, she is a Jamaican immigrant who's getting deported. She also is very much into science and is very analytical and really skeptical, and so that makes herself her own character. While on the contrary, Daniel is Korean American, and he also is a poet, and he's a lot more, I guess you can say, soul-driven rather than fact-driven, which is kind of the contrast that they have between the two of them. Now, this is, I guess, it can start out pretty good, but then it kind of gets a little bit bad, which I'll talk about in a minute. Now I just want to talk about the narrative and the writing style. The narrative style is actually really cool. It's a bit experimental, and I kind of like that about it. It doesn't actually have chapters. The book is set up into different narratives of Natasha's and Daniel's POVs, and then it also goes into like minor characters' point of view, which is a pretty cool idea, to be honest, because like, for example, there's a scene where Daniel is on the train and the train conductor stops everything. And the train conductor then goes and gives like this, I guess you could say, this quote-unquote sermon. He just goes onto like a religious speech or whatever, or tries to like convert people, and then in the scene, Daniel and the other people on the bus get pretty pissed off, and then it goes into the train conductor's point of view and kind of shows a bit of the background, actually, of the train conductor, which I think is pretty cool, to be honest, because you have a different perspective of the scene that just happened. But I am going to talk about that in the cons, because it can get a little bit unnecessary. We also have the writing style that is really good, to be honest, because in young adult, a common thing that I see is that people who write the young adult books won't be actually young adults. They will write the book in the perspective of a young adult, and then they actually don't, they don't talk like an actual young adult, or they don't express feelings like a young adult, which is my main problem with John Green, because John Green just sounds creepy when he writes books to me. So yeah, Nicola Yoon does it pretty well, to be honest, and some of the subjects that she deals with, even though they're very heavy, she actually deals with it pretty well. So yeah, and now we're going to get into the bad parts of the book that I really do not like. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the narrative style. Yep, there is times when the narrative style can get actually a bit unnecessary. Like, for example, the train conductor's point of view. We really did not need it, because he literally never comes back in the book. This, what is her name? I forgot her name, but the lady who checks, like, the baggage at the immigrant's place. You can see I know nothing about any of this stuff, like immigration speaking, but the lady who checks like Natasha's bags when she goes into the specific center for immigration, it's good that we get her point of view because she goes back and affects the book. But this train conductor character does not. The point of view talks about how he one day, like, before he became religious, he was, like, in a dark place, and then he came to religion, and then he got, he got reborn or whatever, and then he wanted to share that with people, and that explains why he did that. But we didn't need that. It was really unnecessary because we don't need that for later on in the book. He literally never comes back. I'm most definite the train conductor literally never comes back in the book. So these 2 pages that we spent on the train conductor were completely useless. So sometimes the narrative goes into people that we don't even need later on, which, I kind of don't like. And we also have the coincidences. There's way too many coincidences in this book. Now, I'm not saying that books can't have coincidences, it can't have miracles. Yeah, you can. You can have little, tiny coincidences. You can have different plot points that can be driven by miracles. Sometimes, use coincidences sparingly. But when your whole story is supported by the idea of coincidences, where literally every single plot line is driven by a coincidence, that's where you get me a little bit lost. You know what I mean? It's just like every time that these 2 kids, Natasha and Daniel, meet up, it is literally just a miracle. That is all it is. There is no, definite reason. I can understand how, Natasha, her meeting with the immigration lawyer is on the same day as Daniel having his job interview. I can understand that. Them running into each other for the first time. Sure. Then Daniel saving Natasha's life. That is a pretty big stretch. Daniel, who convinces Natasha to go and join him for the rest of the day, that is way too big of a stretch because Natasha is written as a character who is extremely skeptical, very driven by facts, and she just met this kid. So, that is not, that's not really good when you have way too many coincidences for your story, because then it gets a bit ridiculous, and then you'll start to laugh at the book, which is kind of what I did for after a little while. And if we want to talk about the epilogue, that's the best example for coincidences, because the epilogue is, the lady who was checking the bags, where Natasha used to go for immigration. The epilogue is after Natasha gets deported and Daniel stays in the United States. The lady who was checking the bags for Natasha back at the immigration center remembers Daniel and Natasha. She remembers the 2 after years. Because this is after years, okay? The 2 are on an airplane, Daniel and Natasha, and the bag checker lady is now a flight attendant. Daniel and Natasha are on the same flight, and she goes and sees that they're both there, and she tells Natasha something, and Daniel notices Natasha, then they meet again. You just ruined the book for me. This is the ending. This is the epilogue. This shows you what happens. This is what shows you after the book happens. It's just why? Just don't. Just please no. I think I'm too cynical and skeptical for this book, which brings me into another point. Instalove. Yeah, this book doesn't have a natural romance whatsoever. Now, here's a disclaimer. I'm not a very romantic person, and I'm not a person who is very much into romance. But there has been times in books where I have liked a romance, where even sometimes it is driven by coincidences. For example, there is a book called Rani Patel in Full Effect, where Rani Patel and her friend Pono, have a relationship. And the thing is that I liked that romance because it was natural. The two were friends for a long time. They didn't meet each other in one day and then decided to be together. That is not what happened. They were friends for a while, and then they started to, like, date and like each other and things like that. And I also like the romance in Fangirl with Kath and Levi. And because it's natural, because it takes place over time. And the thing is that insta-love isn't love. It just isn't. Love is different than a crush. You see, when you meet someone for the first time, there's no such thing as love at first sight. Because love is when you actually come to appreciate a person, but also appreciate their flaws. And, you know, you take the whole deal. You don't take a little portion. It's not like you go and you see a guy and you think he's super attractive. That's not in love, that's a crush. When you realize that the guy has flaws that you appreciate and he has perfections that you appreciate, that's love. When you actually care for the person completely and not just the surface, that's love. But this book isn't that. It really isn't, because the two just have a feeling that they love each other. You know what I mean? Since it takes place in only one day, I do not believe that this whole entire idea of love or fate, it's not convincing to me whatsoever, because it's just like, oh, I just saw her, come to me. Just like, no, it's not good. It really isn't. Like, the romance practically ruined the whole entire book for me, and it kind of broke me, to be honest, because the writing style, so good. I really enjoyed reading it when there wasn't any, like, points in the book where there was romance. I really liked those points. I liked when characters were explained. I liked when they did certain things when they weren't romantically attracted to each other. Because insta-love happens a bit too often in types of books like these, like romance books, in young adult especially. Because the thing is that insta-love shouldn't be really in young adult. For the more analytical readers, they're not going to enjoy this book. They really won't. Because young adult is made for teenagers, or people in their early 20s. It's made for people that have stresses of a certain demographic, and they want to go and have an escape. And the thing is that you can have an escape where it is romantic, that there is a couple that you really like, but at the same time it has to be sort of realistic. It can't be just, oh, these two just fell in love. How do you guys like that? Is that relatable? Because it really isn't. When you have a character that actually over time starts to appreciate another one, especially when they're friends before and then it goes into romance, that's when you have a realistic storyline and one that is actually, you know, appreciative. Is that the word? But yeah. So, what did I actually think of this book? What is my star rating? I gave this book a 3 out of 5 because I thought a 2 3/4 was a bit harsh. But yeah, I guess this is my first quote-unquote negative review, and my first review in general, and that's kind of, I think this video is going to be the gist of what I have, which is going to be pretty harsh on some books. Like, if I liked a lot of the stuff about this book, but there was just some points that just made it a bit unbearable, and I want to read more romance young adult. It's not very appealing. I'm probably not going to read everything, because people have said the romance in that one is a bit even more unrealistic. So I'm not doing that. I'm just not. But yeah, guys, thanks. I'm probably going to be doing a video every Sunday or Saturday. That is the schedule I'm trying to do. But yeah, I wouldn't reread this book. I really wouldn't. And I would suggest it to people that, you know, I would suggest it to people that are not as analytical as me, that, you know, don't like go as in depth and like certain things like this. but me, it's like the themes that it, talks about, destiny and fate and God and different things like that. Those are very realistic things, but when you put it with instalove, it kind of, degrades it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. I was 3 years late, but who cares? And also, thank you guys. In the comments below, you can tell me how you thought about this book and how you think about my videos and things like that, because I do want critiques. And there was also a point in the middle of this video, if you noticed, that I thought someone was at my door and I paused it. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Bye lovely people. I will see you next Sunday. Above